Welcome back. We have our Ontario election panel with us as we wrap up and discuss the results of the recent Ontario provincial election. Again, joining me, Michelle Simard and Mike Patton. Michelle, just before we went to commercial break, we were discussing what issues kind of helped propel Doug Ford to win this coveted third majority. And I want to make a comment, because Mike, you had an interesting thing to say that, there needs to be some introspection done, just like in the Democrats are doing, south of the border. For me, I feel the Conservatives, in my opinion, in Ontario, the provincial Conservatives, the PC party, Progressives, they have shifted so far to the center, perhaps even a little bit to the left, that there's this void now on the right, and they are occupying the space where previously the Liberals sort of enjoyed. When you look at other provincial premiers, like Danielle Smith, like Scott Moe, the other Conservatives, I mean, they are definitely further right than Doug Ford. Michelle, do you want to comment on that? Has the Overton window shifted? Have we shifted where the Conservatives used to occupy space in Ontario?
Absolutely, but it's not just Ontario. Like you said, it's all over Canada, especially now that Donald Trump is in power and he's showing the might of what many people refer to as the Republicans as more conservative. But Donald Trump is a populist, and so is Doug Ford. And at the end of the day, they appease to the populace. So their policies are not really on a political spectrum per se, but Doug Ford did what people cared about. And they cared about infrastructure. They cared about what's happening to their pockets, and tariffs hurt people, and especially goods and services and businesses are trying to survive. The closest border is the United States. People get a lot of products from the United States. It's a lot cheaper than going overseas. And so for them, they're being hit hard, and many of them are going to have to close their businesses. You have a premier who said, I'm going to fight for you. That's what he talked about. But the other two parties, like Mike was saying, they were talking about other issues that really aren't provincial issues, but they thought they were important to people. And really, at the end of the day, the mighty dollar, as my dad always said, is what carries the day for people. Because if you can't support your family, then everything else doesn't matter anymore.
So, Mike, let's talk about the other parties. Bonnie Crombie, this was her first election as leader. How did she do?
Well, I thought she did better than Merritt Stiles. The problem is Bonnie Crombie took a much more traditional liberal approach, and her big issue was hallway health care and family doctors. And she said, if you elect me, I'll make sure you have a family doctor. Now, while that's a popular issue, the problem is most people in Ontario don't believe it. They believe if this issue was easily fixed, it would have been fixed already. So when you say, I'm going to get you a family doctor if you elect me, I think many Ontarians said, well, that's BS. I don't believe you. And so things like that were not effective issues for her.
Well, that's really shocking if you actually digest what you've just said, which I don't disagree with. It's that the electorate have no hope in ever having a family doctor in Ontario, so they're not even paying attention to what politicians are saying on that issue. That's another topic for another show. But my goodness, but you said she thought she did better than Marit Stiles. How did you find the NDP leader Marit Stiles did?
Well, Merritt Stiles, and I think the NDP numbers reflect this, was not able to get any traction. She's had time and time in the legislature to really make a name for herself. And I think she has completely failed. In fact, I would not expect her to be the leader in the next provincial election. That's how bad I think she did. And lost seats to a very lackluster Liberal campaign. But the reality is that Doug Ford did very well. He did not do so well because he was such a great performer. I say again, it was because the NDP and the Liberals just sucked so bad.
Oh, that's too bad. So let's talk about the future for Bonnie Crombie. Michelle, she failed to win the seat for which she was contesting, Mississauga East Cooksville.
Yeah.
So she still doesn't have a seat in the legislature, yet recently she declared that she's going to stay on as leader.
Yeah.
Is that what the grassroots want from the Liberals?
Well, I'm not a liberal, so I have no idea. But really, at the end of the day, I personally think she should abdicate. But I don't think that, as she said, she will. I think the only way she will is if the caucus decides to push her out. And because there's such few caucus, I'm not sure if they're going to want to do that, because they have to look at it as like, if we push her out, who's the alternative? Who is going to run as the leader? And there's really no clear strong liberal at the time who's willing to step up and say, I'm going to do it, unless some liberal candidate from the federal says, you know what, I'm not going to run again, which they have a very safe seat and they're very popular, and they say, you know, I'm going to run. Other than that, yeah, no, I think she's keeping to her word. The only way she's getting out is through caucus. And as for Marit, I think Marit is going to stay on because at the end of the day, the NDP know what their position is. They know that when they finally won with Bob Ray, it was a fluke, and they're just very happy to be opposition again. So I think she's going to stay on.
Okay, we're going to pick up more of this discussion when we come back from this commercial break. Please stick around.